Hi, Mom. Hi, Kelly. Nice to meet you. How are you? You're so beautiful. Thank you. Sure.
They might be at the park.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Hannah Grace,
I'm Kelly.
and we're from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and we just met Ginger Alden, and it was an amazing experience. You know, I've heard some of her stories just watching some videos of her online, and actually getting to see her in person and also kind of show her that I also have the same TLC necklace was great. You know, she was super nice and you know, really cool experience, part of Elvis's history. So.
I mean, not to focus on the vanity, but Elvis had some beautiful girlfriends,
Yes.
I will say. But, and she's definitely beautiful.
Yes, she
and
lives up to
seemed
that.
very, just kind of peaceful and sweet and personable. So it was just kind of fun.
It's a great time in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. If you're not here, you're missing it.
Are you guys ready to meet Ginger? All right, here's some stories. She may expound on some of that a little bit. So without further ado, you guys make welcome Miss Ginger Alden.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here.
All right. You didn't bring your water with you.
Oh, I didn't. Well,
Let's see.
okay.
Well, let's start out since we're in Arkansas. You know, a lot of times when Ginger gets interviewed, they start, okay, let's start in the beginning. Like in the beginning, there was the heavens and the earth. No. They start out, you know, that night where, you know, your sister Terry got invited, but I want to switch it up a little bit. I want it really to flow as a conversation, not a prepackaged type deal. So we're in Arkansas, and if you don't know it, she has a lot of family history here in Arkansas, do you not?
I do. My mother was from Jasper, Arkansas, very close to Harrison. And so this is my first time to Eureka Springs, but I always loved it. And it's been quite a few years, but I came here quite a few times in the past. And when I was young.
Yeah, and your sister's also been here as well, right?
Yes,
Rosemary?
yeah, my sister Rosemary. So, no, it's beautiful here. So I'm excited to be back. And
So she met Elvis towards the end part of 1976, and he had an engagement, his last Vegas engagement in December of 76, and came back off tour, and Ginger, after that tour, had gotten some bad news that her grandfather had passed away.
Yeah.
And I'll let her tell the story because to set it up, you know, obviously you were going to your grandfather's funeral, but certainly after touring out in Vegas you didn't expect Elvis, but he kind of surprised you. I'll let you tell that story.
And Elvis, I was with him on his New Year's Eve show, and I don't know if a lot of you saw that. It was a fantastic show. For me, it was always difficult because I was at all of Elvis's shows except for the 9 months that I was with him, and I thought he did phenomenal. And even when he pulled a hamstring muscle or whatever, he wanted to give the audience his best. But the New Year's Eve show was quite something, but if you had asked me, I just thought they were all so well done. It was hard to separate at the time. But yeah, it was, I think it was around New Year's Eve, my grandfather passed away, and I was very close to my grandfather. So we were coming off the tour, came back to Memphis, and I told Elvis I had to leave. I went to Graceland with him and had to leave. And it just amazed me because I was going to go to my grandfather's funeral. And he told me, he goes, I'd really like to go with you. And we were just shocked. My parents were already in Harrison, Arkansas. And my grandfather lived, they lived in Mount Sherman in Jasper. And so, I mean, how many people would think that Elvis Presley is going to go to the funeral with you? I remember thinking we were going to drive there, and I was like, well, where do we put him? What do we do? You know, we had all these plans to, but I knew he had to be tired from the tour. And I remember just saying to him, you know, aren't you tired? And he said, no, I'd really like to be there. And that always holds a very special place in my heart because the weather was very bad in Harrison. It was very icy and snowy, and I remember Elvis was just determined to get my family there, so he offered his plane, and he ended up flying my sister, my brother, his wife, And it was quite treacherous, and we landed on this icy runway in Harrison, and we stayed at the Ramada Inn in Harrison. And Elvis made sure that we made it up the mountaintop, which wasn't easy because of all the ice, but so Elvis attended my grandfather's funeral, and that was about, I think it was maybe January 3rd, 1977. And that was quite something too. The church was a very small, I believe it was Assembly of God Church in Mount Sherman. And Elvis had a very close friend, Charlie Hodge, from his Army days, and Charlie was with us. And the church was a very small, maybe 6 little pews on each side, and Elvis walks in, and there were other family people that knew, they knew he was coming. And everyone was my relatives, they were very polite to him. And I remember the minister got up and started to sing, and he was quite nervous. He knew Elvis is sitting looking at him, and I'll never forget, Elvis looks up at him and just goes like this and nods and starts slowly singing along with him. And Charlie Hodge did too in harmony, and you could just see the difference, the change in this minister.
He got the approval.
He got the approval. And so it was just an amazing thing for someone. It shows what a good-hearted person he was, that he took time to do that.
Ron, if you don't mind, can you show that other picture that we have? So this is a photo from that day, correct?
Yeah, that was at the cemetery on Mount Sherman. And that was, I'm actually fortunate. A lot of people were like, oh, you're smiling. And I said, well, that's what usually you do when someone says to take a picture, even though it was my grandfather's funeral. But that was by the graveside. So I'm actually happy that a cousin of mine took this picture so that I have it.
I think this was on the cover of several magazines back then, so you guys may have copies of that. And your father also, after he passed, he's also buried in that general area, is that correct?
Yes, my father is buried at the same cemetery.
So you people from Arkansas, this is like a third cousin. I mean, she's family. She's coming back home.
We love Arkansas. I call it God's country.
Is it any Razorback fans in here? Oh yeah, I figured.
But yeah, it was always holds a special place in my heart.
We're going to bounce around. I don't like the format of going from chronological order, so we're going to bounce around. We're going to talk about different subjects. Thank you, Mr. Cherry.
Oh, thank you.
Songs. You went out with Elvis starting, I guess, November, December,
Yeah.
all the way through his passing. So I think it's pretty public knowledge. You only missed 4 or 5 shows during that period. So songs. What are your favorite songs that Elvis performed?
Oh,
Or
wow.
didn't perform and maybe just sang in private?
I loved Unchained Melody. I loved a lot of his gospel music also. But Unchained Melody was beautiful. There are so many, I didn't see him perform Kentucky Rain, but I loved Kentucky Rain. Wow, that's a hard, I get asked that sometimes, what's your favorite Elvis song? And it's just hard to pinpoint because there's so many. And no one sang gospel like Elvis. I mean, it's just amazing. It gives you chills. But yeah, just trying to pinpoint
Usually for you didn't get to see Can't Help Falling in Love that much because they would usher you.
Right.
But didn't he tell you one time he wanted you to stay till the end?
That was in the very beginning. I believe it was the very first tour. I don't know, could have been in San Francisco. This was in November of 1976. And I was told to sit, there was a chair for me off to the side behind the sound man. And Elvis, well, first I was told when I Can't Help Falling in Love with You, that was the closing song for him, when that starts to play, for me to leave and get in the limousine because he's out of there, You hear the Elvis has left the building. He left the building. So.
He didn't do encores.
No. So I was a little nervous about it, and I was sitting there, and I was watching. So I left, and this was in probably the very first show I saw. And when we got in the car, he turned to me and he said, "Oh, did you see the ending?" And I said, "Well, no." And he wasn't too happy, so he looks at the guys in the car and he says, "Next time," because I didn't know if I was going to be sent home, if we were going to date or what. And he said, "Next time, make sure she stays for the end of the show." And sure enough, it's kind of funny because I forgot about it and I stood up and I heard a voice say, "Stay." And I looked and he was kind of pointing at me. But the whole reason was, if anyone was fortunate to see Elvis perform in person, he always did these amazing karate moves a lot. And that's what he wanted me to see. And he went into this whole thing, he'd go into that low stretch, which pulled his hamstring a lot of times, and he had pain from that. But that was quite something, and I knew that's what that was all about. So sure enough, I got to see the ending of that in the beginning.
You mentioned after the show you get in that limo. A lot of times he would go straight to the airport, would he not? Or would y'all normally go back to the hotel? What was the...
I guess it depended, But a lot of times he'd stay in the jumpsuit, and then change on the airplane. But it seemed most of the time we were getting back on the airplane a lot and going to the next place.
Was the conversation mostly about the show? Like, how did everybody like...
He would usually when he settled into a hotel room, he would sit for a long time and bring people in because he cared so greatly about his performances. And he would talk about what went wrong or what didn't. And he had such a keen ear for if someone hit a wrong note or anything, he would stop the show and start over again and apologize a little bit and because he wanted to please everybody so badly. But many nights he'd stay up and talk about things, and then read a lot of books. He was into just certainly a lot of reading.
You mentioned, well, we talked about December of '76 in Vegas, and Elvis was a generous soul when it came to giving gifts, was he not?
Oh, absolutely.
And we've talked in private about this a lot. He bestowed a lot of jewelry on you during that Christmas month, did he not? And you kind of told him you weren't big into jewelry. What was his response?
Well, this was when I first went to Las Vegas. Elvis asked me, and I was with him for his very last, unfortunately, we were there, 10 days? I believe it was from December 2nd to December 12th, 1976. And it was his last Las Vegas performance. And I was sitting in his suite with him at the top of the Las Vegas Hilton. And I remember I think Joe Esposito's road manager was there, and he was saying something to Joe, and Joe would leave and come back and all this, and Elvis would leave the room. And I remember all of a sudden Elvis calls. I left the room once, came back in, and then Elvis tells me to close my eyes and hold out my hand. So I did, and this beautiful ring, like diamond cluster ring, was put on my finger. And then he's like, okay, hold out your other hand. He kept doing this, and I got 4 rings that night. And everyone knows Elvis with jewelry, and I was so blown away by it. And I wasn't really a jewelry person at the time. I didn't wear a lot of jewelry. And I remember saying to him, I said, Elvis, I appreciate this. This is a lot, too much. And I said, I'm not a jewelry person. And he just looks at me and he goes, you'll learn to like it.
Well, I see you're sporting a piece right there tonight.
I am.
Well, tell us about that.
Wow. One night, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the TCB logos from Elvis, Taking Care of Business, and a lot of the females around him had these gold necklaces made, Tender Love and Care. And so I believe it was after Christmas, and I was at Graceland one night. And Elvis liked to do this with he loved to present things. And he had a box opened up with this necklace on it, and he would take the bedside lamp and shine it on it. And I came in the room and I saw this, and I was just blown away because it was a little while into the relationship, but this was special made.
So he kind of put it on display.
He did.
I think I heard Elvis, he liked to give gifts, but the biggest kick he got out of it was seeing what your reaction would be.
Oh, yeah. And he wasn't happy if he when he was younger, and it just brought him a great deal of joy to be able to do that. I remember he told me once, he said, people love to see beautiful things when they wake up in the morning. They like to see that, and that because he didn't have it. And he was so gracious to people, so generous to so many,
So a funny story is Ginger, we had a conversation a couple months ago, and she said, I was going through some of my stuff because we're going over to England, and we're going to take a few items over, and she goes, I got these 2 checks, and they're in this old photo album. The old photo albums had the glue, you know, and we all hate them now because we can't get our family photos out. You try to get the heat, but you don't want to melt any. Well, he wrote her 2 checks, and she stuck them in the photo album, right? And that's great. But tell them about the checks. I mean, this is hilarious. I mean, this is Elvis Presley, and then you can follow that up with the McDonald's stuff. But this is funny stuff. He wrote you 2 checks. You still have them.
Yeah.
And tell them the amounts.
Well, one I think that's for Christmas. It was for 25 cents. Then he got a kick out of doing it, you know. So that was just something he wanted to do.
Worth a lot of money because you do that, but it was worth 25 cents.
Maybe 26. No. And then there was another one for 10 cents personal. And I always look back in things. This is going way back. My father. This is a whole other story about the Army and all this. When Elvis, my father was in public relations and recruiting for the Army. And back, what was it, 1958, when Elvis, the word was getting out of the draft board that Elvis would be drafted. So a lot of the different branches of the military were going to try to get him to join. And my father went down to Graceland once my father was in the Army, and to try to get Elvis to join, possibly think about joining the Army. And Elvis wasn't home. He was told, Elvis wasn't home, but before my father could go back, Elvis got drafted into the Army. So Elvis was in the Army 2 years. When he came back, let's back up here. My father, when Elvis was enlisted or drafted, my father was at the Kennedy Veterans Hospital. And the new recruits were brought in, and so there are some pictures of Elvis, that were put in the paper, and Elvis shaking my father's hand. And that was a really cool thing, but that particular day, my father told us later that Elvis wanted to make a phone call, and he didn't have change. And so he asked my father if he had any change. My father gave him a dime. And so I always relate in a strange way that it was just a joke that this check that Elvis wrote me was a dime. I said, it's payback. In a strange, weird way, but that little check.
I want to go back to a comment you made earlier today about the necklace, because I asked her a little bit more in depth about, her receiving it, and she made the comment that, when I got this necklace, I thought, hey, finally I'm part of the group. And, as history prevails, there's a lot of different cast of characters in that group, and vicious. I mean, when we first met 5 or 6 years ago, I said, this Elvis world, it's spliced up and it's fractionalized, and it wasn't really what you expected. But there's a reason why you really didn't get to know a lot of the entourage because of Elvis's choosing. Kind of walk us through that day to day with you and Elvis, and a lot of times Rosemary was a part, of going into the private quarters and you guys kind of closing those doors where maybe in the past, previous relationships or with other people in the entourage or even family members, he was more engaging. But when you kind of came on the scene, he apparently switched some of his gears a little bit and spent a lot of that time with you and even Rosemary when you guys were out on the road.
Rosemary's my eldest sister.
So you, in my opinion, as a fan, I think you kind of got a bad rap, from some of the people that were there because they were accustomed to certain interactions with people in Elvis's life, and that necessarily did not happen with you. You want to expound upon
It was
that.
hard. Some people, were basically, I didn't get to know a lot of the people. I mean, Elvis kept me very sheltered upstairs with him a lot, and so it was difficult I wasn't able, and maybe within the time frame, I was so focused on Elvis, and that it just wasn't easy. I wasn't hanging out downstairs, and he didn't want that. And I could tell there was some changes coming, but I think our relationship, it scared some people. Some people thought, well, this isn't going to last. They were used to certain things, and when it was just, unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of time to know people well, and there were a lot of stories started that just weren't true, and things misunderstood. So that's why I waited a long time, but I finally wrote a book because I thought I had to try to clear up and let people see what was actually happening, because a lot of people never knew, you know.
Right. In an interview I recently saw with Larry Geller, who, if you don't know, he did hairstyling and some of the spiritual stuff with Elvis. He even alluded to, without even mentioning you, in that last year of his life, Elvis was definitely making changes in his life. And, you know, I see that.
I could tell by things he said to me, you know, different events that had happened and little things. Or sometimes he'd get mad and I'm going to fire this person, I'm going to do this. And I think some things were different for people, and maybe I think a single Elvis, I think people were afraid of their world changing a lot, you know, and they liked things kind of the way they were. And so I think it was a little scary when I met Elvis and what was happening between us and what they were kind of seeing, and, you know.
I don't think they challenged him too much, maybe through the history, but you actually alluded to certain incidences in your book where you did push back and you did ask questions, and I don't think you've ever really gotten a fair platform on why you did that.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you can talk a little bit about, you know, why you did push back, why you did challenge him to do better.
For those of you who have read my book, there were some events that happened, and I had to write about those, because Elvis, I always said 98% of the time he was a wonderful person, and then this darkness would come in because of what I remember with the medication usage, and it would cause some mood swings. And I thought, when you're trying to help someone, so I went through some events with him, and he wasn't used to being told maybe not to do this or don't do, you know, and I kind of suffered for that later from some others, because things were misunderstood. People just thought, you know, one of the biggest things that some people started lying about was that Ginger Alden hated touring, or she didn't want to do this, or she asked him to have her parent. None of that's true at all. I mean, I loved watching Elvis perform, you know. I wouldn't have been at every single show, and just, I mean, I loved music. I grew up, my mom was musical, my sister played piano, and so someone started that along the way, and I didn't do a lot of, you know, take part in a lot of books early on, and so you kind of have to go back to the original people that started some of those stories, and I know who the majority of them are, and then a biographer will come along and pick up that story, because I didn't talk to the biographers, you know, and so, and then they run with it, so the story stays the same. And you know, when Elvis passed away, I went on with my life, and I was proud of that. I worked, you know, I had a son, and when my son went off to college, because of so much out there, and I wasn't aware of a lot of stuff that was said. I knew a few things, but I thought, I've got to do this for history's sake, because it was unfair to Elvis, it was unfair to me. So it took 38 years, but I had written down a lot of stuff shortly after Elvis. Some things you don't forget, but I wanted to hold on to all that, so I'd written down a lot of things. And I'm so thankful that I was able to get that out. Yeah, I mean,
well, one of the things, and we've discussed this many times in great detail, but, you know, there's a misperception out there that was purported by inner circle and even family members that, you know, that last period of Elvis's life, he was lethargic. He didn't want to do anything. And I know, because you and I talk about it a lot personally, but it ticks you off when you hear that portrayal of Elvis, that was really not the case in his day-to-day life. He was not bedridden and things.
Absolutely not. Now, I have a serious problem with that. I mean, the person I fell in love with and was with so much those 9 months, and what I witnessed, it makes me angry. I don't know if some people were bitter because they weren't in a will, whatever the case can be. Some things were just started becoming blown out of proportion, and the next thing you know, it's like Elvis is a vegetable just drooling in bed. And I thought, I had many, many wonderful times with Elvis. Elvis was at my parents' home 10 days before he passed away, and he was singing. And my sister had a baby grand piano, and Elvis was singing, and just his voice was so strong. The shows that he did so frequently and so many those last 9 months. And I thought the majority of them were absolutely fantastic. And it's just, like you said, I feel like sometimes it's just this man is a vegetable, he can't move, he's this or that. And I thought, you watch those performances, he could move. And it's just, I feel so sorry for him that some people said and did the thing. I thought he never ever deserved that. So I have a problem with that.
Couple weeks before he passed, you were, Lisa Marie was still there for, I guess, her summer visit.
Yeah.
So really, out of the 9 months that you and Elvis were together, I guess Lisa visited during the Christmas break.
Yeah.
And during the summer break.
Yeah.
So she wasn't there the whole 9 months.
No,
She went
no,
back
no.
up. But you guys had planned a trip to Liberty Land.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was downstairs. I think you wrote about it in the book.
Right.
So I think it's a great story. Others have written about this a little bit, and it tells a whole different perspective, and you got to question it. But you tell the story about, I guess a week or so before his passing, you guys were going to Liberty Land and taking, I guess, Lisa and your niece Amber,
Right.
and some of the other folks around there.
Right. And we were all getting ready to go. Lisa had become quite friendly with my brother's oldest daughter. Her name was Amber. And Amber was staying, and she spent that last summer with Lisa a lot, slept over at the house. So I was all excited. I knew it would be good for Elvis to get out, because sometimes he wouldn't go out, and you'd try to, he kind of did little tests a lot of time, would make you wait for a while. So I remember fixing Lisa's hair in a little bun, and my niece's hair, fixed her hair, and we were all, I thought, oh, this is going to be great, because I love riding the rides and everything. So I walk out into Elvis's bedroom, and he's still sitting in his pajamas, and he said he changed his mind. And I didn't think it was right. Here the kids were all excited and all this, but it was just, Elvis would do little tests sometimes. And I remember I looked at him and I said, you once told me you could do anything. And he didn't quite like that, but he looks and he goes, get George Klein on the phone. George was a close friend of his. And George calls up whoever's in charge of Liberty Land, and I think a lot of the workers had gone home then. But finally they were able to locate some, and that challenge got him out of there, and I'm proud of that. So
Let's
we
talk
went
about
out.
Liberty Land. You and I discussed
Yeah.
it today. We've heard that story about them going to Liberty Land, but what does Elvis Presley do at Liberty Land? I mean, he's there. The park's his, right?
Yeah.
He's got free reign. But what does Elvis Presley do? Does he go sit down and eat a snow cone? Tell us what Elvis does at Liberty Land.
I remember when he played, I believe it was the ring toss game, and there was quite a group. My sister Rosemary went, my sister Terry, another friend, a lot of people went. And he played, he won a little, remember the little ring toss game? And he won,
Like
I think it was a
ball or
pink,
something,
yeah. He won a pink panther for me, a little stuffed animal, and a big bird, big yellow bird, and I think some toys for Lisa. But he loved the Zip and Pippin roller coaster. And so we got on that. I was in the front seat with Elvis, and I believe his stepbrother Ricky Stanley was on one side. And we stayed on that, and Lisa and Amber got on, and different people. Some people would get off. We stayed on that for probably an hour and a half, just going around and around, and Elvis was wanting to stand up, and Ricky was like, no, you still put your arms in the air and all this. But he had a great time, and it was good to see him, get out like that. So that was a fun night.
So fun things for you, Liberty Land, and you guys went to movies.
Yeah, we saw the Pink Panther Strikes Again, and the Spy Who Loved Me. The Spy, that was it, right? The Spy, I'm trying to think. The Spy Who Loves Me thing. Yeah, and he loved Monty Python. If you guys are really up on, he loved that. And he had introduced me to that. I remember in his bedroom, it was the first Betamax tape machine. These are all, a lot of you may not know what these are, but it was these old giant tapes. But he had, the Monty Python films, and he had introduced me to that, and those were a lot of fun. But he got a big kick out of those.
What about the Mac? I'm throwing it around there. We
we
do not have an outline.
I know.
And I think this is the way conversations should go. I think you should have a conversation just like you're talking over the coffee table. We just got friends here to enjoy the coffee with us. McDonald's gift certificates. Is this just the craziest thing? Tell us about the McDonald's gift certificates because I know everybody's looking for watches, rings, and cars.
Yeah.
And then Ronald McDonald gift certificates show up. I mean, it had to be jaw-dropping for the entourage. I mean, but I'm sure he got a kick out
loved
of
it.
it.
He loved it. He actually, I believe it was in July of '77 that he had my mother, and Elvis had gotten very close with my family. And my mother came out to the house, and my oldest sister, Rosemary, and Elvis got a kick. Rosemary would make him laugh a lot, and he got a kick out of her. But I remember he had me fill out, I guess it was for 50 cents. And he did these McDonald's gifts. He sent one of his aides to go get these gift certificates. And it took a while, and the aide came in and said he had gotten a speeding ticket on the way back, trying to get these back to Elvis. But yeah, Elvis wrote that out and gave to my mother, and he was generous again. He turned around, he said, "Here's your French fries," and then he had a check for my mother, and he goes, "And here's your Big Mac." But that's how generous he was, and you know, as I said, if he gave gifts and you didn't take, he didn't understand that. It's just kind of almost ruined his day or didn't make him happy. So, as I said, he was just extremely generous. But the gift certificates, he loved that.
Hey, Ron, let's go back to that other photo, please. The other one. So this is your favorite photo, is that right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Hawaii trip. What prompted that? What set that up? And what cut it short?
I believe it was the end of February, and Elvis had been talking about redecorating Graceland. And he said, I remember he said, it has to be something that you like too. And we were discussing colors, and I was mentioning green downstairs, and the bathroom that Elvis had given me off of his office. I mentioned turquoise and white that I loved, you know, that would be pretty in that. So anyway, we chatted a little bit about some colors and all this. So Elvis asked me if I had ever been to Hawaii, and I said no, and he goes, "I'd really like to take you there." So I was so amazed, and we left on my sister Terry's birthday, which was March 3rd, 1977. And I thought it would just be a few people. But lo and behold, I think there were 38 that ended up traveling with us. But the whole trip, Elvis pretty much stayed in the back of his plane, the large plane, the Lisa Marie, with my sisters and I. And he was cutting up. Somehow we got on the story of rats. And he was going, "Rats all over my body," and just joking and kind of cutting up with my sisters and I. And then he would mingle. He'd go up front and chat a little bit. But it was great to see him relax. And we stayed at the Hilton Hawaiian Village for a little while, and then Elvis we tried to get him to go downstairs, and my sister was like, "Well, why don't you put on a wig and some glasses and you go down?" And he said he couldn't do that, which I thought was interesting. But we ended up renting a house over, I can't think of the name of the beach, but it was over...
North Shore, I believe. We're over near North Shore.
I can't...
The house isn't there anymore,
No,
I believe.
I think the beach started with a K. Someone here...
What was it?
Is it? Thank you. No. But we rented a house, and you know, it was good. He got out. He didn't really get in the water a lot. He didn't do things. I know this goes into another thing. Elvis had scars on his back from the studs on his suit were so heavy, and I think that embarrassed him a little bit. And he didn't, you know, jump in the water and get the swimsuit and everything. But he had a good time. He was relaxed. We went to the Hawaiian Culture Center, or Polynesian Culture Center, and that was great. I got to see, you know, the show there, the performances, and but unfortunately, we were there maybe 10 days, but the trip was cut short because of sand blew in his eye, and he had some tours coming up. So we had to go. We left Hawaii and went back to Graceland, and he had an eye doctor come in, and I stayed and put cream in his eye at night to help it, and it eventually healed, and so he could go on the next tour that was coming up.
When you guys came back to Graceland and you started this story out that they were already talking about renovating.
Yeah.
You know, it was the red motif when you
Right,
went over
right.
the red motif. And but he had already you had a passion for art.
Yeah.
And you
Well, the surprising thing, but when we did come back, also the bathroom upstairs was decorated in turquoise and white for me. So he had that redone. Which
so he had already started that process.
I didn't know.
And one of the other things is, and we've all been in the racquetball room, which became the trophy room until they built the plaza. there's an area upstairs that I don't think it's part of a tour,
No.
but he was going to put something up there for
Yeah,
you.
I loved art, and being with Elvis, it was of course a lot about him and his needs, and through our relationship, I had mentioned to him a few times about art, because you could get lost in it because you were taking care of him and all this, but the night that, or at early morning before he passed away, when we had played a little racquetball that night, and this first time I'd been in the racquetball court with him the whole time we'd been together. So he took me on a little tour, but he went upstairs and there's a jogging track, and he pointed to an area, and it made me feel so good because he mentioned about building an art studio for me. And I thought, he's listening, he's getting that, you know, and that always meant a great deal to me.
And when you guys went to the dentist, he asked Dr. Hoffman,
Yeah.
hey, when we get back, you know, can you do some work?
Yeah, about doing some future dental work on my teeth, and yeah, I mean,
It doesn't sound like a guy that's trying to get rid of a girl, you know. I mean, if you're going to do some dental work and build her an art studio and all these other things, and
it's a parting
you know,
gift.
yeah, and the spa guy, you know, I don't really, as a fan, I really.
Well, you read a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I don't really understand the dissension. I really don't. I think, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but if you were there and you lived a part of that, whether it's 15 minutes or 15 years, it doesn't matter. You have your story to tell, but I think they need to stay in their lane and tell their story. And I don't have a problem with that, as long as you tell the truth. And I'll say this, I watched a video the other night, because, I mean, even some of the naysayers admit, you know, engagement, but, you know, wasn't going to get married. I was a policeman, and, you know, like Dragnet, just the facts. I don't want to hear what he said or she said. Let's just talk about the facts. And I think the story, because you were truly unplugged for over 40-something years, you really didn't pay attention to really what. I think the story got diluted for self-interest, and I think we go back to what we started about with Bill, authentication. I think truth, authentication needs to be said. And in '78, you gave an interview, not projecting that we'd be sitting in Eureka Springs 40-something years later. And the comment said in 1978 was that night, it was talking about the night Elvis passed, or the night, you know, or the night before. Your comment was, and I quote, we talked about wedding plans, okay? Now, you'd have to be really projecting into the future to come up with that statement in 1978 if it were not true. So, you know, as a fan and a friend, I look at the facts, folks. The man called Lowell Hayes up and said, I need a ring tonight, okay? She got the ring. They were talking about the wedding plans. Billy Stallings just showed you the church. Look at the facts. You guys are smart. And if somebody is talking out of turn in this Elvis world for whatever reason, look at their motives. I mean, I'll call them out. Okay, I'll call them out. There's a country music singer who I enjoy. He was friends with Elvis. He just came up with the night before Elvis. He was over there at Graceland at 4 in the morning. It never happened.
I've seen some Lulus of stories, and I don't get it.
If you listen to these people's stories, there was 14 people in bed with them every night because they were all with Elvis. I mean, I'm my best friend. Well, I spent the last 18 hours with him. No. So anyway.
There was a funny story. Is anyone familiar with Leo Sayer? And I liked Leo. He did some fun little songs back then. Didn't know him, never talked to him. He tells a story now, and I've had people ask me that Leo Sayer says he's the last one that spoke to Elvis, and that he called up and that I answered the phone, and I thought, I would have remembered Leo Sayer. But I'm just like, that's not true. And I've just never seen more stories of people. I think it's trying to be relevant, that they were spoke to him a day before he died, or this or that, but they all had a deep-seated need to kind of. And somebody, you know, there were some people of Elvis's, or members of Elvis's entourage, or what do you want to call it, the Memphis Mafia, that I had no idea who they were, you know. and they were friends with each other, and I mean, you know, I've seen things said, and it's like, I never met that person. I don't know them.
Well, I
So
say all that to say this. The one thing I can say about Ginger, and if y'all haven't picked up on it, I'm big on history and I'm big on being authentic, is from the interview she gave in 1978 to tonight in Eureka Springs, her story has not changed. It has been consistent. She has totally told her story without embellishing it and getting into somebody else's history. And if there's a lesson learned from us fans, and I'm talking to you guys as a fan, then I think we need to hold them accountable. That don't get outside of your lane. Stay in your lane and stay in your 15 minutes, and I think everybody will be happy. I think it will cut down a lot on that. Let's go to some of these questions.
Some questions.
Yeah. All right. Question number 1. What was Elvis's spiritual condition the last 6 months of his life?
I mean, from the moment I met Elvis, he was into Eastern philosophy. Just curious, you know. Elvis definitely believed in Jesus. A lot of people say, oh, he was swaying away from that. And a lot of these books were occult and all this. I think he was just, it was interesting to him. And there were so many, but we spent so much of our time reading and going over books. And I remember sometimes, I mean, and I was learning. It was different. He had to teach. Larry Geller, they call him his spiritual guru, his hairdresser. Larry brought a lot of these books to him. A lot of the guys didn't like Larry, from what I understand in the beginning, because it was strange stuff. But I thought, you know, Elvis, it was important to him. And from the very first night I met him, right off the book, or right off the right off the bat, he handed me a book and said, read this. And I knew he was staring at me, and I was nervous. But that, constantly when we traveled, there were suitcases full of books. And they were worn, and the pages were falling out. He had, you know, underlined a lot of the words. And it was important to him. So I thought, well, I'm there. I didn't fully understand it. I had to be honest at my age, but I thought it was interesting to him. But I started to memorize some of the lines. And he'd say, gee, it's like we're one. You know, I'd take a breath or something, and I could finish the line for him. But, you know, I started memorizing some of the lines. But he was definitely into that interest and more introverted during my time with him.
So beyond any physical or social connection, he really wanted a spiritual connection.
He did. I mean, when I met him, you know, so the king of rock and roll, and I thought he wanted to read. And I found that fascinating. And he wanted to learn a lot. We could be on tour, and he'd have somebody have a dictionary, and he'd try to spell a word or know the, you know, say the meaning of the word. And that was important to him.
Another question. Who was your, oh, this is good.
No.
Who was your favorite Memphis Mafia member and why? Can you discuss details?
Well, once again, it goes back to not getting to know, being with Elvis as much as I was in those 9 months. There wasn't a lot of time to hang out with the guys and get to know, or the girls and get to know people. I know certain person Elvis looked up to was a karate instructor, Ed Parker, if people are familiar with Ed, and he was fascinating to watch. Elvis called him his high priest, and Elvis really respected him and loved having him around, and I understand he was brought on later when Elvis had some trouble with some former bodyguards. He was brought in to help with being a bodyguard for Elvis, you know, helping on stage to help protect him. And but he respected, you know. George Klein was nice, but I didn't get a lot of time with him. So,
Not on the agenda here, but we had discussed it before. Sam Thompson was part of the Memphis Mafia, and obviously he was Linda's brother. And you even said to me, you kind of felt at the time a little bad because, you know, new girl on the scene, and here's the brother of the previous girl.
And Sam was nice at the time, you know. Sam was fine, didn't have a problem, but it was awkward. It was an awkward relationship to be in, knowing Sam was there.
Right. Ricky Stanley?
Ricky was okay, but Ricky was, you know, one of the aides and would
Ricky
help out a
Ricky.
little bit. Yeah.
All right. Next question. Did you and Elvis have a favorite music you listened to together? What was it? And was there a particular song or anything that brings back memory of time with him? Other than, I'm sure he didn't sit up there and play his records, but I mean, what kind of...
No, he
music?
didn't. He loved Brooke Benton, Anne Murray. My main memory is the radio being on a lot. He would leave the radio on, or the TV was playing. But sometimes he'd be trying to, Elvis was quite the teacher, and he wanted me to learn a lot, whether it's in the books or just philosophy, life. And if there was a certain lyric in a song, he would be talking to me and he'd go, "It's talking to you." And, you know, he did that a lot, but that was my memory, was a lot of the radio all the time. And he didn't like heavy metal. He did not like, I remember he stood up to go to the restroom once, and there was a screeching heavy metal song playing, you know, the guitar, and he turned and he just said, "Boy, I'll break your GD fingers." And he walked on into the bathroom.
A lot of tonight's conversation has been about trying to really get to know Elvis, the person, the man. He made a comment to you one time about the man and the image, and he referred to that street out there. What did he say?
That was the first night when I met him, which was up at Graceland. My sister was Miss Tennessee. And, trying to make a long story short, but yeah, that night we had a phone call at our home, and George Klein, it was on a Friday night, November 19th, 1976, and George Klein called our home, and my mother answered the phone in the kitchen. And normally my sisters and I were out, but that particular Friday night it was unusual, the three of us were home. So my mother answers the phone, and she comes in the room and says, "George Klein's on the phone," and said Elvis was dating around and wanted to meet the new Miss Tennessee. My sister was Terry was Miss Tennessee at the time. And we were just stunned. So, and my sister had a boyfriend at the time. I had been seeing someone. So anyway, my sister goes in the kitchen, and we just thought, this is going to be a great opportunity to see inside Graceland. You know, we'd driven past, I grew up in Memphis, so we'd driven past it, you know, quite a few times over my course of my life. So my sister, she was invited to go up there, and my eldest sister, Rosemary, made a comment like, "Well, can Ginger and I go?" And it was such a funny night because my sister Terry, it wasn't proper, and she asked George, and George hesitated a little bit, and I guess he went to ask Elvis, I don't know. And I felt terrible. Anyway, George came back and said it was okay that we could accompany my sister that night. So I didn't feel good. We were all getting ready, bumping into each other, trying to put on our makeup and everything. And then I thought, you know, because my sister Terry made a comment, she goes, "I really hope it's okay you guys go." I knew she wanted us to go too, because we kind of protected each other and all this. She didn't want to head off to Graceland by herself in her car. So when she made that comment, she goes, "I really hope it's okay you can go." And I started going, well, we weren't really invited. So I stopped getting ready. And my oldest sister, Rosemary, comes up and she goes, "Come on, Ginger." She goes, "You know, the worst that can happen is they ask us to leave." So I thought, well, she's right. So we got all dressed up and headed off to Graceland, but trying to shorten this story or make it long.
You tell me.
I know. But just going through the gates or approaching the gates, our home was maybe 30 minutes, my parents' home was, from Graceland. And just approaching those gates and seeing them open for us was amazing feeling. And we pull up, and it was maybe, I think we were supposed to be there at 11 o'clock at night, so it was close to 11 at night. And we pull up, and my sister Terry, she was driving, she stops the car, and we were just sitting there. We didn't know what to do, and out of the shadows, this guard comes up, and my sister rolls down the window, and she goes, "What do we do?" or something. And he goes, "Try knocking on the front door." So we get out, we're walking by, you've all seen the lion statues on the sides, and my sister, you know, we start going, "Lions and tigers and bears, oh my." And we step up to the door, and my sister Rosemary, she was always the bravest, she rings the doorbell, and I kind of hung back, you know, a little, and the door opens, and it's Elvis's friend George Klein. I was thinking Elvis would open the door, it's his home. But George answers the door, and so George, you know, asks us to come in, and I always said it was like Alice through the looking glass, stepping into this high, you know, Graceland looked different than it does today. You know, it was this high, red shag carpet, and it was quite a different look, but some people called it gaudy, but I thought I wish it had been left that way, because that's the way I remembered it, you know, at the end of his life. But we stepped inside, and there was all this laughter coming from the dining room table, or the dining room. And I look, and I see a waft of smoke curling up, and there were these really tall, high-back red chairs. And I remember thinking, oh, that's going to be Elvis. And we step around the side, and it was a cousin of Elvis's, or it was his cousin Patsy, his husband Gigi. And he had a cousin Billy Smith, Billy's wife Jo, and they were all playing cards and smoking cigars and things. So Elvis wasn't there. So George takes us on a tour through the kitchen, and we go into the den. And George actually took us downstairs. I think we saw the pool room and everything. And so we go back up, and the maids brought us a soda, asked if we wanted anything to drink. So we're sitting there, and George leaves. And at different times, the phone would buzz. I don't remember the phone ringing. It would buzz. And there were different lights on this particular phone. And George would answer, and then I think George told us that Elvis was practicing karate, and that like he'd be down in a little while. So George leaves, and my sisters and I are sitting there, and we're having our soda, and we're sitting in what's now the jungle room. And all of a sudden, and we started kind of pretending we had a little makeup and primping, and all of a sudden I look and I see a camera aimed our way. And I was like, oh my goodness, has that camera been on us the whole time, and we're doing silly little things? So, but different people came in the room. I met a couple of his stepbrothers. I think I met Ricky Stanley. Charlie Hodge came in and was telling some funny jokes. And finally, at one point, George comes and says, oh, let's go up to Lisa's room. And I was really shocked. I couldn't believe we were in Graceland, let alone now we're actually going to go upstairs and go into his daughter Lisa's room. So we follow George up the stairs, and we go into Lisa's room, and my sister's, there was a couch. When you walk in the door, there was a couch and a chair here, and then Lisa had this huge, I guess they called it a hamburger bed, a big white furry bed. So my sisters and I sit down on the couch, and George and maybe Billy Smith, Elvis's cousin, came in and just making a little small talk. And I mean, by the time I started looking, it was like 2 hours had passed. And I was like, maybe Elvis changed his mind. Maybe this is just, we're going to be asked to go home in a little while. And I didn't understand why it was so long. A lot of time had passed. So all of a sudden, different people coming in and out. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, this figure comes in. And I remember I looked up, and I was very, very shy. And it was Elvis. And he had on, I believe it was a blue karate top and maybe black pants and his black boots. And his hair wasn't the pompadour we all see. But I just blurted out, "Hi, Elvis," and which was unusual for me. And he said hi. And the interesting thing, he sat down, and he was so nice and cordial. And I remember he takes out a cigar, and his cousin Billy leans over and lights it for him, and he sits back in the chair. And he actually shook each one of our hands before he sat down, but he knew each one of our names, so someone had told him who was who.
Elvis did his homework.
Yeah. But, and he was such a gentleman. He was talking to my sister Terry and talking about pageants she had won, and I had just been in a couple of small little pageants, and he gets to my sister Rosemary, and he was going, well, what pageants have you won? And she said, well, I haven't won any, or I haven't, and he goes, well, you'll just have to be Misunderstood. So that was the name he gave me. But, he was quite the gentleman, and just asking about different things. Mainly talking to my sister Terry, who was a great classical pianist. And at some point during the conversation, Elvis just looks down like this, and he looks back up at me, and he goes, Ginger, you're burning a hole through me. And I was so embarrassed. I remember my face went red, and I thought, God, have I been staring? I'm sure I was staring at him. And I go, who, me? And he goes, yes, you. So I just kind of made me a little more quiet then, and I didn't know what to say. So anyway, we continued talking a little, and then he decided to show us the rest of the upstairs. So we get up, and I remember I was still affected from the comment he had made. So we start to walk down the hall, and all of a sudden he takes the Pepsi. I still had my Pepsi in a glass in my hand, and he takes it from my hand, takes a drink, hands it back to me. And then I was so kind of shocked by that I started to go back down the stairs. I was going the opposite way, which his bedroom was this way and the office was that way. And he puts his hands on my shoulders and starts guiding me back through these double doors, and we go into his office. And he was showing us this office, and there was a big electric organ, to one side, and a table in the back, or not a table, desk in the back. And then we go through double doors, and he shows us his bedroom, and you know, it's a big I believe it was 9 foot by 9 foot bed, and I mean, you hadn't seen it, you know, a couple of televisions in the ceiling, and it was certainly nothing I'd ever seen before. And he takes us through his bathroom and goes around, and he had it was his dressing area in the back. There were all his clothing, so much of his clothing hanging there, and there was another one of those big like hamburger fur beds back there. And he started pulling out little pieces of clothing, and it was just amazing. We all know how Elvis dressed, and it was just amazing to see these costumes. And he was talking about how beautiful his costume. There were a couple of costumes hanging there, and he said they were heavy, they don't let air in and out, but he thought they were so beautiful. So at a point he leaves, and he goes, "Excuse me," and he goes back toward his bedroom, and he asks for George to follow him. So I look at my sisters, and I was like, how did an innocent night at home, we're standing in Elvis's closet now. And I always thought those things were personal. You don't take somebody into your closet, but Elvis was like, it was like this persona, like, look at this belt, this is who I am, this is the... So we're standing there looking at each other, and all of a sudden, George Klein comes up and says, "Ginger, Elvis would like to see you for a minute." And I kind of panicked a little, because I was, once again, pretty shy.
You thought you were in trouble?
Yeah. So I remember I look at my sisters like, "What's he want with me?" And he goes, he's in there. So I walk back through the bathroom, and Elvis is sitting on his bed on the side. So he goes like this for me to sit down next to him. So I sit down, and now we're back to the story that you said.
No, you're good.
No, he starts right off the bat saying, "I don't like one-night stands." And I thought, well, that's good. I don't either. But he's like, "I don't like one-night stands." And I'll never forget, he says to me, he goes, "I'm not that street out there," which was, it had been, what, Highway 51 or Highway 54? But it was changed to Elvis Presley Boulevard. And he goes, "I'm not that street out there." He goes, "If you cut me, I bleed." And that said volumes, I mean, to anyone. And I remember, you know, it's like he wanted somebody to understand him. So that was a night that I saw there were all these books by the bed, and but the story got even. I ended up reading with him for hours. Before I knew it, it was maybe 4 or 5 in the morning, and I remember thinking, God, my family, you know, they're going to be worried about me. I need to get my sisters. And I mentioned something to him, and he goes, "Oh, they've already gone home." So George, I found out later that George had said my sisters were welcome to stay, but that Elvis had wanted to talk to me a little bit. And but they went on home, but they felt pretty bad. But I ended up, and he was quite the gentleman.
Went right to bed because, you know, it was just another night, right?
No.
I think everybody, didn't you tell me everybody was up at the house like, okay, we got to hear what just happened?
I come home, and one of the, he sent one of his aides to give me a ride home, and he said, "Make sure you get her number." And I remember he wrote down my number on a matchbook by his bedside. And he leaned over and gave me a light little kiss. And I walked out of Graceland that early morning in a daze and went home. So of course my family is sitting up like, what happened? So I was explaining to him, I didn't know if I'd see him again anymore. You know, you just don't know. And I remember he did say, "Would you like to go on tour sometime?" And I was like, well, yeah. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but it was, yeah, so that was...
Would Elvis call you in that early part of the courtship, or would, you know, would he have one of the guys call you?
Sometimes I think it was one of the guys. Somebody else would call, but then later as time went on, and he had a private line that he would call. But that was my very first meeting him that night.
Well, here's an interesting question. If you could share a piece of advice with yourself, your younger self, what would that be?
It's a good question.
That really is. I mean, so here we are, you know, all these years later.
If it's in relationship to Elvis, obviously, I mean, I often look back, and I've had, it's not advice to me. I think I would have, I don't know, I would have liked to have asked more questions about some of the people around him. Really. I don't know what advice Elvis had some, Lamar Fike was one of the people around Elvis, and I asked him one time, we were in Palm Springs, and I said, "What does Lamar do for you?" And he goes, "You know, it's a good question." He goes, "Remind me to ask him."
Would you do it all over again? Any regrets?
No. I Absolutely.
No regrets?
I wouldn't miss sharing to be loved and have that special love by someone. I wouldn't have missed that for the world. I mean, my world changed because of it. But just to know someone and be blessed to have shared, you know, had him allow me and my family to share a part of his life. It was truly blessed, and I would absolutely do it over again.
What was your favorite piece of jewelry from Elvis and why?
Oh, well, that would have to be my engagement ring. It was January 26th. I was at Graceland with Elvis, and we'd been sitting in his daughter Lisa's room. And at one point he got up and he went to his room, and I was still sitting there, and a little time went by, and I know he was on the phone. I thought maybe he's talking some business. And I went in one time, and he was on the phone, so I came back in. And I could hear some commotion going up and down the stairs. And at a point, finally, after a little while later, he comes in, and he takes me by the hand, and he walks through the back side of his dressing area, and there was a black chair in his bathroom. And his bathroom was his sanctuary. That's where he got away from a lot of people. And he had me sit in the black chair. And all of a sudden, Elvis gets on bended knee and starts saying some really beautiful, beautiful words to me that he'd been searching for love for a long time. He'd been 60% happy, 40% happy, never 100%. That he never thought he'd find it in his own backyard. And he goes, "I'm asking you, will you marry me?" And he goes like this, and he's got a green velvet box, and he hands it to me, and I open it. And inside was this magnificent diamond ring, 11 and a half, 12 karat diamond ring. And I said yes. We hugged each other. It was interesting because when we stepped out, I remember Elvis telling me, well, before we stepped out, I remember him saying, a lot of people are going to be jealous of you. And I thought he meant the female, the women, you know. I didn't realize the in-house jealousies and all that had been going on with some in his inner circle and all this. And that was a big deal. So when we stepped out, I remember Charlie Hodge, his friend, gave us a little backgammon gift as like a little engagement gift. And Billy Smith hugged me. I know David Stanley, Ricky Stanley came in, and they knew about it. So, and then Elvis, I mean, the ring was so beautiful, and I remember Elvis saying, "Hold up your hand, it looks like a headlight." And I would sit there, and he had his Aunt Delta come up, and some of the housekeepers come up. And I mean, I couldn't believe it. It was an amazing, amazing night. And I remember he wanted to show his father. So at one point, actually, we went downstairs first and showed his grandmother. And she was happy for us. I remember she said, "I hope you have a little boy." And so we go, we cut through the backyard and go to his father's in a back way to his father. His father lived in a house on Dolan Street or Dolan Avenue. And it's funny, his father gave us a hug and he showed his dad, but I got the feeling that his father knew, that he may have talked to his dad about that, and that his father knew that that was going to take place. And then not long after that, he wanted to go show my parents. So we ended up driving. My parents didn't know we were coming to their house. So we drive in or drive over and we go inside, and you know, I think Elvis wanted me to have my hand behind my back like this. So we walk in, and I told my mom we were engaged, and she was like, "Wow, I've never seen a ring that big." And then my sisters came out, but you know, it was a very, very special night.
So a funny follow-up story to the ring. A few weeks ago, I was in Nashville, and our promoters from England had come over to do some promo stuff, and Spa Guy came out to meet us for lunch. And we're sitting in the restaurant, and Spa Guy got up and went to the restroom. Perfect timing, by the way, Billy. And Ginger looks at me, and between she and I, it's her little purse, and she goes, "Hey, I got the ring." And I'm like, "Really? What ring? I mean, we've talked about many rings."
Yeah.
She goes, "The ring." I'm like, "Where?" She looked down in her purse. I said, "Break it out. I want to see it." So she pulled out the vintage Laurel Hayes, I'll call
The
it
green box.
like green velour
Yeah.
box. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, I don't know. She opened that thing, and I've never seen 11 and a half carat diamond ring. But good Lord, I mean,
Well,
that was amazing. I mean, that was a
I didn't know.
beautiful ring.
I didn't know till after Elvis passed. I mean, the story that his his jeweler told about having the diamond. Elvis had a famous ring he wore on stage, TCB ring in black onyx. And I remember him showing me that early on when we were on tour, and he couldn't wait. Actually, I think it was in Las Vegas. He brought it out, and he was showing this ring, and he loved wearing it. But Lowell Hayes, his jeweler, told a story of how Elvis, and I never knew that, how Elvis wanted that particular night to have that ring made for me, or to get a ring. And Lowell said he didn't have one that size, and Lowell suggested, and Elvis let him come and take that stone out of his TCB ring he wore on stage. And to this day, it's still, if you go to Graceland, that's a zirconia that's in that ring. They never replaced it.
Wow. And I saw the ring, and then Billy came back over to the table. I said, well, you missed it, buddy. And I showed him the ring. And, you know, you can talk about it, you can see pictures of it, but at the end of the day, until you actually see something like that in person, you can't describe it. I mean, it is probably flawless. I mean, normally in a diamond that big, you'll see some carbon deposits. No. This was a flawless diamond. So, you know, is that the curfew bell, or is that the ice cream truck? We're gonna wrap this up. I will tell you guys that a couple weeks, Ginger and I and her friend Terry, we're getting on a plane and we're going back to England. We're doing 5 dates over there. Liverpool, which I'm kind of looking forward to because the caverns and the beetle history over there. So we're going to get to do that. So if you're in England in a few weeks, come see us. And then in July, we got invited to go up to Toronto, Ontario, and Hamilton. You know, Elvis he only played out of the country, if I'm not mistaken, the one time up in Ottawa. Billy, am I right? 2 times? Okay. More than one place, but one trip, is that right? And I think there's a lot of fans. I know we got great reception, would you agree, in England last year? A lot of Elvis fans in Canada, and so we're going to go up there and do that in July. And I will tell you guys, August 14th at 4 o'clock, she will be in Memphis during Elvis Week to do another conversations piece and keep putting that truth out there and telling that story, which I hope you guys do appreciate that.
And I just wanted to say to all of you, I mean, it's the power of Elvis. We all loved Elvis so much, and I really appreciate you being here because it's just testimony to his legacy and his legendary and whatever you want, but that how he affected all of us and you know, in a positive way. And you know, like I said, he didn't deserve a lot of the stuff that came out, and I don't understand it. It makes me angry, and so you know, I remember the 98% that was the good, not the 2%. You
picked up that torch. You think it's time to set the record straight?
Well, you can only tell your story and let people, you know, hope that they understand where I'm coming from and what I experienced. You know, it wasn't, somebody said, oh, were you looking at this through rose-colored glasses? And it's like, no. When I saw, you know, I wrote an honest account of what I witnessed. But some of the stuff that had come out, I just never saw that. And I thought, was he at a worse place at a different time when I saw him? Did something happen? But, you know, through the good times and bad times, you know, I mean, the majority, as I said, were good times. And I just, I feel for him. And to have such a good person with such a good soul be treated a certain way, and you know, it's just not right, because he deserves a lot better than that. So I thank you all for supporting him and caring about him.
We do appreciate you guys coming out and buying a ticket for this. This was not available to the general admission ticket buyers. This was a VIP special thing, and Lisa did that by design, and I think it was the proper call. I like the more small, intimate group setting, and tomorrow it's going to get a little wild in Eureka. It'll be rocking. Ginger, you're coming back, right?
Yeah, I'll be back. Gotta watch Bill.
You gotta watch Bill. Y'all don't know this, but the first time Ginger and I met, she missed the Jungle Room sessions at Graceland by a couple months.
Yeah.
And I tried to charm her and said, you know, hey, do you want to come to the Jungle? It was Nashville Elvis Festival, and Bill was doing a reenactment of the Jungle Room sessions, which in my book, that was some really good music that he put out in those sessions. And oh, it was no. She shot me down for 6 months straight. And then she finally gave in and called me. And we went, and, you know, can you imagine being Bill Cherry and Ginger Alden walks into your show? You better not.
Well, I didn't normally see tribute artists.
Yeah, she had not really
I hadn't
seen
seen any.
But
And Bill
I think,
does a great
and
job.
we've talked about it, I think she appreciates the effort that
Oh, I
he
do.
puts
Well,
into.
but Bill does a phenomenal job, and he honors Elvis in a great way. But I remember when I was with Norman, we were back in that first area
Oh, yeah.
and the door went open, and I saw Bill, and it was just an eerie feeling for me.
He was wearing the black DEA
Yeah.
running suit
Yeah.
type thing.
And
I'll
the
tell you
light
what
was
she's-
on him, and it was like, oh,
Well,
God.
here's the thing. The door opened about 8 inches, and Beverly, who was working with Bill, told Bill, hey, they're here. And Ginger looked, and Bill kind of turned in that silhouette. And you can imagine 77 Elvis in the DEA. And if y'all have ever seen Mr. Bill Cherry in his outfit, I mean, come on. And she looked at me and she said, oh my God. I mean, she almost thought.
It
But
was-
he
it was
did
great.
an excellent job. And it goes
He
back
does,
to
he
the
does.
authentication,
Yeah.
you know. And she came out for Bill and I do the thing during Elvis. We're not doing it. We're going to do it again if you guys are at. We've had questions. Bill and I will tee it up again on the 50th anniversary, and we'll get Ginger back. We'll do another show in Memphis for that. But this year coming up, we'll definitely do another conversations piece. If you guys are planning on coming and you would like to submit some questions, send them to me or send them to Spa Guy, and we'll be happy to interject your questions into that night. It's hard to do call and response from the crowd, but we do want you guys to have some input into the questions and answer all your questions. And we just thank you for coming out and, you know, telling your story and being consistent with it. I think for me that's a big thing, and for us guys that want the history right and we want Elvis acknowledged in that positive light, we do appreciate that. And
Well, thank you.
with that, is everybody good? Is everybody ready for tomorrow? Yeah. All right, so check your schedules. I can tell you there's a lot of activities. There's right outside this venue is Basin Park, and there's free music out there. I think you guys, there's a Johnny Cash luncheon. I think gets sold out. What else we got, Lisa? We got trivia.
We've got trivia, we've got music bingo, bands in the park.
Yep, and then tomorrow, doors open here at what time?
6, I would say, 5:36.
Okay, so we have Austin Irby and Riley Jenkins are going to come in, backed by a great band. They're going to come in and do 50s Elvis, and we'll get Mr. Cherry to put the cherry on the top of it, and then Sunday over in Basin Park is a gospel show that both Austin and Riley will be participating in that. So if you're still around Sunday and you want to go hear some, you want to repent from Saturday night, okay? We're saving souls, Faith. You go sin on Saturday, repent on Sunday. But go and check that out, and do me a favor. Lisa's worked her butt off on this, and it's very hard to do a first-year festival, but I'll go back to my original conversation. I think this is a great little town to come in and do festival stuff and go shop and go eat and sightsee. So if you guys really enjoy your time here, give her feedback so she'll consider doing this again and growing it even bigger. Are you guys good? Y'all ready to go? Go maybe, y'all got anything planned for tonight, or is it just free for all?
It's free for all.
Okay. All right. Ginger, thanks again for coming out and telling your story.
My pleasure, happy to.
Yep, and you guys have a great night, and we will see you guys tomorrow.